Welcome back to another video. If you're new here, I'm Trevor and I am eternally uncool. If you're not new here, sup? Have you eaten today? Drink enough water? Okay, good. I've talked about Fall Out Boy quite a bit on this channel. Some may say too much, but they're one of my favorite bands, and yours too, probably. Of course I'm gonna talk about them a lot.
It's time to stop!
Fall Out Boy has been around since the early 2000s. They've defied every convention of pop punk, transcending the genre and eclipsing most of their peers in terms of mainstream success and longevity. They've released some of the best pop punk and pop rock albums of the last 20 years, and some that, well, aren't that... But which are which? Lucky for you, I'm here to answer that question. Now, I'm only going to include studio albums. I won't be including comps like My Heart Will Always Be the B-Side to My Tongue or live albums. I also won't be including Fall Out Boy's first debut album. That's right, they have more than one, as the band does not like to talk about it. These are all my personal opinion. These rankings are not definitive. Don't get your panties in a twist if I put your favorite album at the bottom. Calm down. Breathe. Without further ado, let's get into Fall Out Boy from worst to best.
She's an American beauty. I'm an American psycho.
I think I've made my opinion of American Beauty and American Psycho pretty clear on this channel. I don't think I've made a Fall Out Boy video without mentioning how much I dislike this album. And it's not necessarily that it's a bad album or it's poorly produced or anything. I just think it's boring. The singles are great. The album has great singles, don't get it twisted. But those are all at the front of the album. The back of the album is utterly lacking in bops, with only Immortals to keep it afloat. And I don't even like that song that much. This also came out around the time when bands like Fall Out Boy were seriously lacking in the guitar department. I don't mind when bands get a little more electronic, but I think Fall Out Boy was trying to do something that not even they understood. Pete Wentz described this album as David versus Goliath. Whatever that means.
I don't understand.
He said, the problem with modern rock is that it isn't modern. Rock shouldn't be relegated to a quaint little corner of Guitar Center for dads to find. He goes on to say he wanted to make a throwback instead of something futuristic.
The fuck?
Which is confusing. Didn't you just say modern rock wasn't modern? Is it a throwback or is it modern?
What do you mean? I don't understand.
There is a sort of 80s arena rock quality to it. That's kind of cool. The songs are big and catchy and glam. It kind of sounds like if Imagine Dragons were a Guns N' Roses cover band, but sounded nothing like Guns N' Roses and Imagine Dragons. It sounds like Imagine Dragons. You make me a believer. Hey. If I had to find one good thing about this album, it would be that Fall Out Boy are always trying to progress. They're one of the few pop punk and emo bands from the 2000s to maintain their mainstream success. Whereas some of their contemporaries might have turned to butt rock or just watered down their sound completely, Fall Out Boy kept trying new things, even if it alienated fans like me who enjoyed the pop punk eras. American Beauty is definitely an adventurous album, and I have to give the boys props for that. I vividly remember the moment Fall Out Boy returned from their hiatus. After what felt like an eternity, they released a single and a video for their comeback track, My Songs Know What You Did in the Dark. It was an exciting time to be alive. I remember listening to this album a lot back in the day. Me and my brother's car at the time was this Honda CR-V that the previous owner had installed subwoofers in. We would be driving to school in the morning just blasting the kind of music that was not made for subwoofers. The All American Rejects first album, Counting Crows, Bleed American, and of course, Save Rock and Roll. There's only 2 or 3 songs I'm not really into on this album, but the rest of the tracks are just bangers. I think one thing that really made me like these songs as much as I do is that the band did something crazy and recorded a video for every track and released them as like this kind of mini movie series, The Youngblood Chronicles. I'm someone who loves music videos. I even make music videos up in my head when I'm listening to music.
That's weird.
The album also has some great features. Fall Out Boy has always had some really cool features. Elvis Costello, Lil Wayne, that guy with the hair from Motion City soundtrack. But this album includes Riot Girl legend Courtney Love and the GOAT, Elton freaking John. Do you know how stoked I was to find out that Fall Out Boy were collabing with Elton freaking John? I'm sorry, I know that's not his middle name, but come on. Elton John. So if I'm singing this album's praises so much, why is it at the bottom of the list? This album has the same problem as American Beauty, where it's just far removed from the Fall Out Boy we all grew up knowing and loving. Save Rock and Roll suffers from this problem less. Or maybe I'm just blinded by nostalgia, I don't know. This album, despite what I love about it, just can't hold a candle to some of Fall Out Boy's greatest works. You make an entire video defending Mania and you put it this low on the list? What the fuck? I do like Mania more than most people. I am a proud Mania apologist. But is it some of their best work? No. Mania was Fall Out Boy trying to do something different but still falling into the same habits as American Beauty and Save Rock and Roll. It was a valiant effort that doesn't deserve the hate it gets, but it's one of Fall Out Boy's least classic albums. If you want a more in-depth video, I highly recommend checking out Defending Fall Out Boy's Worst Album. I'll link it somewhere, or maybe not. I don't know, I'm not very good at that kind of stuff. Always be promoting, or whatever Glenn Ross said.
Put that coffee down.
Oh no, it's LaCroix. Yeah, watermelon. So when were you guys gonna tell me that I didn't have my rings on? I get this far into the video and you guys can't say, psst, hey, you forgot your thing, stupid. Fall Out Boy's most recent album sees a return to form for the Chicago Legends. They came back in full force with a guitar-driven album that included some of the best Fall Out Boy songs in recent memory. It's fun, it's catchy, but it still has yet to prove whether or not it belongs in the same category as some of Fall Out Boy's best work. For all the great things about this album, Joe's guitar work, Pete's writing, Patrick's vocals, I still feel like this album has to prove itself. It's not a bad album, not by any stretch of the imagination, but it's only a few months old at the time of this recording. We love it, but what if they come out with something better that makes this album look like dog shit? What if this ends up as the Save Rock and Roll of this new era? An album we love because we missed our boys. Absence does make the heart grow fonder, you know. But for this list, So Much for Stardust fits neatly in the middle. Maybe on a future list it'll be higher, but we're not in the future. We're in the present. The nightmarish, horrendous present. Now, I'm gonna take it down for a minute. I know I talk a lot, I'm throwing a lot of information and opinions at you. Let's just take a second to relax and regroup before continuing on with this list. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, subscribe. These next 4 albums were hard to rank. Fall Out Boy's first 4 albums are classics. How am I supposed to rank them without pissing someone off? Well, I guess you can't please everybody. With that, let's get into the top 4. Fall Out Boy's second album is seen by many as not only one of the greatest pop punk albums of the 2000s, but one of the greatest albums of the decade as well. It encapsulates the time period perfectly without dating itself. This is the album that kicked off the pop punk explosion of the 2000s. After this, we would see thousands of bands wearing eyeliner, straightening their hair, shoving themselves into skinny jeans, and trying to imitate Patrick Stump's vocal styles. We'd see Fall Out Boy's influence in bands like 5 Seconds of Summer and The Cab, but none of these bands could capture the same lightning in a bottle that the boys did with From Under the Cork Tree. Fall Out Boy's major label debut sees them kicking their pop-punk style into high gear while also sneaking some hardcore riffs in there. I remember hearing this album for the first time and not knowing what to make of it. I discovered Fall Out Boy in middle school, and up to that point my musical taste was mainly 90s alternative bands like Counting Crows and Gin Blossoms and Third Eye Blind. Sure, I was a big Green Day and Blink-182 fan, and I was also getting into MCR at the same time. But when I heard this album, I was confused.
I don't understand.
Pop punk for me was Green Day, the Ramones, bands like that. It was fast and catchy and snotty. From Under the Cork Tree was fast and catchy. But it was also a third thing that I really couldn't place my finger on at the time. It was danceable? What? Even at 13 or 14, I could see that Fall Out Boy had pop appeal. And it showed with From Under the Cork Tree. Not a lot of pop punk bands can achieve mainstream appeal. They can try. Set It Off and Water Parks are a good modern example of pop punk bands gaining a modicum of mainstream momentum. Try saying that 5 times fast. Modicum mainstream momentum. But Fall Out Boy are the forefathers of that. They're like the stooges of emo and pop punk. And From Under the Cork Tree is like their raw power. Now, I know a lot of you are gonna be mad that this isn't at the #1 spot or even the #2 spot. But this is my video and I make the rules. From Under the Cork Tree is a great album. There's no doubts about that. It's a classic. And it's an album I don't really have any complaints about. There's little to no skips, it still holds up, but it's not their best album. Not even close. We're getting there, don't worry. Be patient. Trevor, you can't seriously think that From Under the Cork Tree is better than Take This to Your Grave. Are you stupid? Are you nuts? You guys like that little character I'm doing? Take This to Your Grave is probably one of my favorite pop punk albums of all time. I mentioned at the top of this video that I would play Save Rock and Roll on repeat. Well, I would do the same with this album. My first car had a CD changer, and this was one of the many CDs that was on rotation. I would make mix CDs. And by the way, if you're wondering how old I am mix CD old. And I would include almost every song off of this album in these mixes. Wonder if I still have any lying around. Okay, so most of the mixes from high school are probably gone or scratched to all holy hell by now. But I did find 2 of those mix CDs. One is called Whoa, and the other is a little bit more emo. It's called The Definition of a Diary. Yeah. I wish you guys could hear them, but unfortunately you cannot. Or fortunately, depending on how you think. I've said it before and I'll say it again, I will always be a pop punk kid at heart. No matter how much indie hipster or experimental hip hop or jazz I listen to, I will always return to pop punk. And I always return to this album. This was the album that put the boys on the map as a band to look out for. The lyrics are some of the most relatable in all of Fall Out Boy's discography. Probably because this was before they were writing about fame and narcissism, you know. It deals with jealousy with classic songs like Where Is Your Boy Tonight?
Where is your boy tonight?
The instrumentation retains that Chicago hardcore influence, while still having the bubbly pop-punk melodies. It's probably Fall Out Boy's most accessible album.
Folie deux means the theatric of two. Oh, sorry.
My favorite era of Fall Out Boy has to be the late 2000s pre-hiatus era. They almost sort of abandoned the pop-punk sound of From Under the Cork Tree in favor of a more pop rock sound. They were writing songs about the trials and the tribulations of being Pete Wentz in the 2000s. Oh, they went from pop-punk riffs to guitar solos inspired by Guns N' Roses. It was extravagant and obnoxious, and I loved it. Folie deux is Fall Out Boy's most extravagant and excessive album. It mixes pop-punk with R&B and 2000s pop music. An era when pop music was cool. Just as a reference, some of the pop-punk songs released this same year included Hot and Cold by Katy Perry, A Milli by Lil Wayne, and Burning Up by the Jonas Brothers. Baby! I rest my case. This album is just pure power pop. Some people might not be into that, but I sure am. I am sweating my ass off. This album has one of my favorite album openers of all time. Disloyal Order of Water Buffalo starts out slow and then kicks it into high gear with the chorus. It gets me pumped up every time I hear it. Then the second track continues that high. I Don't Care is a great song with a perfect sing-along chorus. All the songs on this album are so damn catchy. America's Sweetheart, Head First Slide into Cooperstown, Tiffany Blues, and the deep cuts. Oh my god, forget about it. I mean, $20 nosebleed, hello. Have you ever wanted to disappear and join a monastery? Go out and preach your manic straight. I only have one problem with this album, and it's that What a Catch, Donnie isn't the closer.
What do you mean? I don't understand.
It would have been so perfect. You have this emotional song about friendship that includes a medley of the band's early hits sung by label mates like Travie McCoy and Brendan Urie and William Beckett and Elvis freaking Costello. It would have been the perfect song for them to leave us on. But I guess we just can't have nice things. Bands always seem to hit their stride in the third album. My Chemical Romance with the Black Parade, the 1975 with The Brief Inquiry, Green Day with Dookie, and Fall Out Boy with Infinity on High. After the success of From Under the Cork Tree, Fall Out Boy ditched pop punk in favor of a more diverse sound. There's still some of that pop punk vibe here and there, but it's mixed with funk and soul, some R&B, crunchy guitars, and orchestral arrangements. This was definitely the first time we saw Fall Out Boy take a chance and experiment with sounds outside of their comfort zone. A lot of bands will have success with their sophomore album and just try to ride that wave, sticking as much to the formula that got them success as they can. But not Fall Out Boy. No, they saw the success they had with this seminal pop-punk classic, and they said, no. We're gonna kick this shit up a notch. The album kicks off in the coolest way possible, with a Jay-Z feature. Now, this was 2007, mind you. Jay-Z was already one of the biggest rappers. Scratch that. One of the biggest artists. Scratch that too. One of the biggest people in the world. And he was featured on a Fall Out Boy song. That would be like today if Water Parks had a Kendrick Lamar feature. And then the opening track bleeds into the frenetic, pumped up energy of The Takeover, The Break's Over. From there, it's like this album doesn't stop. Arms Race, Like a Lawyer, Hallelujah. This album is all killer, no filler. It also features production from Babyface, a very well-known R&B producer. An R&B producer working with a pop-punk band had to confuse a lot of people back in the day, in both genres. But the 2 tracks Babyface produced are 2 of Fall Out Boy's best songs. I'm Like a Lawyer and Thanks for the Memories. One night, yeah, one. The rest of the tracks are produced by Neil Avron. I hope I'm saying his name right. Who produced From Under the Cork Tree and would produce a lot of future Fall Out Boy albums. He's pretty dope too. I mentioned the production because it's probably some of the best I've ever heard. I'm not usually someone who gets a boner over production, but this album just sounds that good. This is the Fall Out Boy album I always come back to. It's the one I spin the most. It retains the energy of their pop-punk beginnings, while also exploring the pop rock that would become their future. The songwriting from Pete is S tier. Patrick's vocals are incredible, as per usual. Yeah! Joe's guitar work is some of the best he's ever done. And Andy Hurley is Andy Hurley. He's a god-tier drummer. It's a very cohesive album with the boys performing at the top of their games. It's a perfect distillation of their sound up to that point, and a preview of what they would be capable of on future albums. What do you think? Do you agree with my list? Do you not agree? What's your favorite Fall Out Boy album? Let me know in the comments. That's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you absolutely demolished the like button. And if you enjoyed it, maybe someone you know will enjoy it too. So share this video with everyone in your life. Your best friend, your coworkers, your cat. Yeah, send this video to your cat. I need their validation. If you want to see more videos like this one, I highly recommend subscribing to my channel. My videos have been getting a lot of views recently, but I haven't been getting a lot of followers, and that's suspicious. But you should subscribe because I post videos every week. I talk about music, music culture, and anything that interests me. But mostly music right now. My goal is to reach 100 subscribers by summertime. Getting so close. And liking the video, leaving a comment, interacting with it in any way helps me to reach as many people as possible and find people who are into what I'm doing. With that, I thank you for watching. As always, I'm Trevor. Stay uncool. And that's the end of the video. Goodbye.